Our final speaker needs no introduction. For me, he ranks amongst the greatest and finest trade union leaders this country has ever seen. And I've got some heroes in this movement. A.J. Cook, James Connolly and Jim Larkin. And Arthur Scargill's up there with the best of them. Give a big round of applause to the leader of International Miners Organisation and still the leader of the miners in this country. I can't forget, never will, the national conference that took place on the 12th of May 1984, when women from all over Britain came to Barnsley to take part in a rally and a meeting. We planned that there would be about 500. I arrived at that meeting and I couldn't believe my eyes. Over 12,000 women had gathered on what they call the Green in Barnsley. They only allowed two men to march with them at the front. The president of the Yorkshire area and me. And as we approached the first intersection, the police said, "You've got to go that way." And of course, being law-abiding citizens, I understood that. And men normally followed the agreed route. They said, "We're going that way." And he said, "But that's the town centre. That's where we're going." And they did. And the scene outside the public hall had to be seen and heard to be believed. We had inside that hall over 3,000 women and a similar number outside. And before the meeting started, the chief superintendent came in and he said to me, "Do you realise that you're breaking the law? There are too many people in this building. I'm asking that you leave and get the number provided for by law." I looked at him. I said, "I'll tell you what, if you want to have a word with them, and if you want to tell them to go, be my guest." And he looked at me, and he looked at them, and he said, yeah, he must have had some diplomacy. He said, "I will make it clear, I am giving you a time limit to vacate this hall." This was midday. He says, "I want every person out of this hall by no later than 6 tonight." Women won, police nil. The strike in 1984 brought union representation and support from all over the world, including countries like France, Spain, Italy, Hungary, East Germany, South Africa, and in particular Ireland. And I was pleased about that because I'm half Irish. But I will never forget the French CGT, International Miners Organization, and my comrade Alain Simon coming across the channel into the coalfields in Christmas 1984, driving lorry loads of food, provisions, and a gift for all the families and our children at a time when they really needed it. Some people say it was a terrible time. Most women I've talked to say it was the greatest Christmas they've ever had. And like thousands of other trade unions internationally, they continued to support us. Their reason for doing so was simple. As has been said by my colleagues, 40 years ago, the Tory government, led by Margaret Thatcher, declared war on the National Union of Mine Workers. Now, I have a confession to make. I never met her. I met every Prime Minister or heckled them from 1945. But I met her daughter. She interviewed me for LBC Radio. She'd been well briefed. She said, "What does it feel like to be the most hated person in Britain?" I said, "I've no idea, my name's not Thatcher." I want tonight to tell you the truth about what happened, why you're so honoured all over the world, in country after country where I go or I've been. They talk about you. They talk about the miners who were on strike, and they talk about women against pit coal closures. I was amazed to be talking in China to people who I thought would never understand, but they understood perfectly because they actually read what was taking place. The Tories have been preparing for a showdown with us ever since the 1979 election. They couldn't forget the victorious miners' strike in 1969 and the other strikes in 1972 and 1974. And no, I haven't made a mistake. In 1969, Britain's miners came out on an unofficial strike. We went on strike in order that surface workers should be paid the same wage and the same hours as people who work underground. No discrimination. That was our sentence. In the spring of 1982, I was handed a copy of a secret document drawn up by the government and the National Coal Board. At the present time, I'm not prepared to tell you which person it was, but I will eventually. It was prepared primarily by the National Coal Board chiefs, earmarking 95 pits for closure with the loss of over 100,000 jobs. It became clear following that the period that the union would have to take action. What do you do when you're being threatened with closure of your unit, the loss of your job? Do you just accept it? Or accept a handout? Or do you stand up and fight back? Well, I can't spell the word compromise. I never have. And therefore, we had to take action. A special conference took place on the 21st of October 1983. And just in case a reporter from The Sun has crept in, 1983 is before 1984. It was an unofficial strike, but it soon turned into an overtime ban unanimously adopted by the conference. And for 4 months, it had a devastating effect. Coal stocks went down. The coal board were in trouble, and the government even in more trouble. The conference had voted unanimously, including all those areas in Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire and the Midlands, to take that unofficial action. Make it official in line with the rules of the union. It cut coal stocks to the same level that it had been during the unofficial strike in 1981. Listen to the dates. On the 1st of March 1984, NCB directors in 4 areas announced the immediate closure of 5 pits, Corton Wood and Bullcliffe Wood in Yorkshire, Herrington in Durham, Snowdown in Kent, and Polmaze in Scotland. On Tuesday, the 6th of March, in the same week, the chairman, Ian McGregor, confirmed a further 20 would be closed during the coming year, with the loss of 20,000 jobs. At the National Executive Committee meeting on the 8th of March, that's from the 1st of March to the 8th of March, we had to do something. Scotland and Yorkshire applied for permission to take strike action. The rules of the union are clear, or they were clear. Under Rule 41, if an area is faced with a threat, or if they go on strike, or take an overtime ban, they have to seek permission from the National Executive Committee. And if they do that, it's in order, it's in accordance with the law and in accordance with the United Nations and the International Labour Organization statute. Within a week of adopting that Rule of 41 and those 2 areas, 180,000 miners were out on strike. On the 12th of March, the area strikes began. I'm fed up of reading and listening to critics who say we picked the wrong time of the year in March for a strike. The industrial action starting at that time. Well, it didn't. It started in November the previous year. And it was because it was successful that they decided to go on the attack. And it was the same reason why we responded and went on the defence and attack. An appropriate time couldn't have been better than November 1983. But still there had to be a special conference because some areas did not want to have a strike. So we had a conference on 19th of April 1984 in Sheffield. We had at that time 180,000 or 80% of Britain's miners who were already on strike. And the issue was, would other areas join it or would they reject it? and more important, would they vote for a ballot? Time and time again, the media have said Arthur Scargill would refuse to call a ballot. As far as I was concerned, the people who should have been balloted are the National Coal Board and the government. They should have been asked, do you agree that we can take action to save our pits? They didn't take a ballot. They took a decision. Well, we didn't. We took a decision based upon rule. And the decision was clear. Once that strike had started, not only were the miners involved in bitterness throughout the coalfield, I argued at that time that we should select correct targets. I wanted to fix on steel plants, and there's a reason for it. They were saying they got power station stocks for 8 months. But I knew that the stocks of coal that they had in the power stations dwarfed compared with the stocks they had in the steel plant. They got only 3 weeks supply. It was the obvious target. If you're going into a battle like that, you go for the weakest point of the enemy. I argued that the Scunthorpe type plant in Yorkshire, the Ravenscraig plant in Scotland, and Port Talbot in South Wales should be the targets. For weeks, the executive wouldn't agree with my view. But eventually, when British Steel broke an arrangement to have coke to just keep the ovens warm, broke into full-scale traffic of coke and production of steel, the obvious was there. We either stand and fight on that, or we walk away. Why was the 3 weeks important? It was important because we could have won the strike if we'd have taken strike action on the 10th or 12th of March. Don't believe me. I don't advise you to buy the book written by Margaret Thatcher or the Energy Secretary Peter Walker, but they state, she certainly does, that we've got to protect the steel plant at all costs, and if that means we can bring in the army, we will do so. Faced with that, we took a decision to have a mass picket. And for the record, it wasn't on the 18th of June. The strike at Scunthorpe, Orgreave, took place on the 23rd of May. Developed on the 24th of May into a major dispute. And on the 30th of May, loads of people were arrested. On the 30th of May, all were being arrested, including me. Following that decision and that action, we knew that the thing to do was to have a mass organisation, a mass picket, which seemed what could happen in Saltley in Birmingham. I'll never forget it. We fought for 4 days and we were being battered. And after speaking to meetings all over Birmingham. And I told the time, we don't want your pound notes or your votes of sympathy. We want you out on strike like trade unionists should, joining us. To their eternal credit, the chairman stood up and said, "Brother, what time do you want us there?" And I told him on the Thursday. On that Thursday, I've never seen anything like it in my life. 20,000 workers from the engineering and transport unions marched on that plant. It were a coking plant, like Orgreave, and he stopped it. We won the battle, and we won not only the battle, but we won the strike. We could have done the same at Orgreave. Picketing, as being said, was coming to the attention of the media at a late stage. Again, I'm fed up to my back teeth of listening to historians, the media, and unfortunately, as has already been said, some of our own members, saying that 18th of June, the police welcomed the pickets and directed them towards the plant. It's a lie. The pickets who turned up on the 18th of June were planned weeks in advance and publicly announced. And I purchased, on behalf of the union, walkie-talkies from an old shop and distributed them to strike leaders from different areas. We kept in touch and we were effective. For example, when they say we couldn't get near the plant or we were welcomed, it's absolute nonsense. What happened was on the record. When we approached that picket line, we decided we had to take that further action. There were pickets from the Doncaster area who actually occupied the Orgreave plant. They took it over. We had the walkie-talkies going. It took them nearly 2 hours to detect these old-fashioned walkie-talkies with all their super-duper equipment. We had to switch to. It only took them 10 minutes to tap that one. But, of course, they keep saying in propaganda that we were taken on that day like sheep to the slaughter. Nothing could be further from the truth. Anyone who was at Orgreave knows what happened. The pickets were battered, beaten by a paramilitary police force. It was a state force that we were opposing. If there was one weakness, it was the failure of the trade union movement to come to our aid. Contrary to the newspaper reports, even today, the Daily Mail, we've got a full spread with 10,000 pickets, and they had 8,500 police armed to the teeth. Dogs, horses, staves, truncheons, and you've seen on television what happened, and those who were there experienced it. this paramilitary force went berserk, and people had to take action. I recall very clearly that day because I got knocked out by a shield. They keep denying that I was hit by a police officer. A man from a local pit in South Ainley had taken a photograph, and it was a photograph of the police actually striking me on the back of the head with a shield and knocking me unconscious. But they were doing the same to others as well. They kept me in hospital, and they were bringing them in to Rotherham Hospital in droves. Such was the issue. But what is missing from all the propaganda is what happened on that day, because there was something that happened that's never referred to, isn't really known. But I'm going to tell you, and it's the truth. On the 18th of June 1984, we closed Orgreave plant. How do I know? Nick Jones, the BBC correspondent, later gave me a telex from Haslam, the chairman of British Steel, saying the plant is closed. Not only that, Dave Douglas, who unfortunately can't be here tonight because the lad's had a stroke and is in a serious way in hospital in Durham. He wrote in a book that the plant was closed. But more important probably, the chairman of this meeting heard it on radio that the plant was closed. Now, whether or not miners took the view that it had been closed permanently, I don't know. But I put phone calls out from the hospital to all the areas and said, tomorrow and onwards, get more pickets, not less. If we'll build more picketing as we did in 1972 in Saltley, we'll win this battle. All I can say is that we learned a lesson. Had Orgreave stayed closed, the Scunthorpe Steelworks would have been faced with immediate closure. I've been accused of refusing to negotiate. What a load of tripe. We've bet with the coal board time and time again. We settled on 5 different occasions an agreement with the coal board. I'll tell you the dates: 8th of June, 8th of July, 18th of July, and 10th of September, and 12th of October, only to have the hand of the government and David Hart organising the UDM, the breakaway union, interfere. On one occasion, McGregor said, I've got to phone. He phoned, he came back and he said, I've just phoned my sister. And Mick McGregor said, how is Margaret Thatcher? The sellout. We were sold out. The matter went to a hearing at ACAS on the 12th of October 1984. NACOS, that's the Deputies Union, were in one room, the NUM in another, the coal board in another, and the ACAS officials in the fourth. we reached a point where somebody had to make a move. And after futile discussions, we had to do something. The Deputies Union had had a ballot. 82% had voted to come out on strike with us. And so I wrote in my handwriting a proposal to put to the NACODs so we could both join together. That would have been absolutely vital. I'll tell you what it was. This were the words. That the National Coal Board withdraw its pit closure plan, give an undertaking that the 5 collieries earmarked for immediate closure would be kept open, and guarantee that no pit would be closed unless by joint agreement. Agreement means exhausted or unsafe. This proposal was accepted by the leadership of NACODs. It was emphasised that if the Coal Board did not accept the proposal, which was acceptable to ACAS, the strike would go ahead. On the eve of the second meeting, to impose that decision, all of a sudden something had changed. I learned that the NACOD's leadership had inexplicably reneged on that agreement. It's even worse. For the first time in living memory, the TUC leadership urged NACODs to go on strike, and they ignored it. And as a result, signed an arrangement that led to the decimation of the mining industry. But on the area that mattered, we, as the NUN, continued, as been already said, to fight. We determined our position on the 21st of February 1985 that we would continue the strike until the government gave way and reached an agreement. Inexplicably, by the 28th of February, 1 week later, and you've got a right to know, 5 areas wrote to the NUM Secretary, Peter Heathfield, asking for a recall conference to agree an immediate return to work without a settlement. That conference took place on the 3rd of March 1985. The National Executive position was clear. I made it absolutely clear that the National Executive Committee was bound by the decision of the members at the conference on the 21st of February that the strike should continue. The conference itself asked us to adjourn and reconsider. And in the Executive Committee meeting, a vote was taken. 12 delegates on the NEC voted to end the strike, and 12 areas, including Yorkshire, opposed it and said we should continue the strike. I've been asked time and time again, why didn't I cast a vote? I'll tell you why, because I'm not bloody daft. They wanted me to cast a vote. If I'd cast a vote in favour of the Welsh area to call off the strike, I could never have lived with myself. And if I cast a vote in favour of the Yorkshire resolution, I would have been defeated in the conference, and the headlines would be Scargill defeated. So I made it clear that the areas who wanted to move a resolution should move their own. And the areas that moved a return to work were South Wales, supported by Durham, and of course of the other 10. The rest of us were against. And for the record, Mick McGuckie, Peter Efield and Arthur Scargill made clear that we were in favour of continuing the strike until we won. I'll tell you one thing. If the women against pig closures had had a vote, they'd still be out. The chairman referred to the issue of the Featherstone riot, as some people call it. Nonsense. It was the Featherstone massacre. And I did the oration at the centenary of that terrible massacre. I also unveiled a monument. Those men were shot in the back, and one man died instantly in Featherstone, and one man died in Wakefield the day after, which meant there were 2 inquests. The inquest in Wakefield did what's been said from the platform. The judge said they were justifiable homicides. In other words, the South Derbyshire, Staffordshire regiment were justified in shooting. The second inquest in Featherstone were recommended by the chairman, yes, the judge, to find a similar decision. And to their eternal credit, they didn't. They recorded a verdict of murder against those men. And they've gone down in history as heroes of our class. And 4 weeks ago, I went to Featherstone and I went to pay homage to those 2 lads who lie in that cemetery. And the people who called the riot squad, the people who called out the regiment who shot them, lie unattended, unrecognised, forgotten. And these 2 brave men who gave their lives, together with dozens of others who were injured, are remembered today as the heroes of the working class. The chairman talked about the heroes of the past. For example, James Connolly and Jim Larkin, real heroes of mine. I don't know how many people know that Jim Larkin spoke at the graveside of the legendary Joe Hill, the American trade unionist who was framed on a murder charge. But he did. And Larkin said, build no monument. He doesn't need one. His life, his commitment, his principle in itself is a monument. I'm now 86 years of age, and from the age of 16, I have never swerved 1 inch from my commitment to my class, to socialism, to the trade union.